Robert Fisk, is a pleasure to listen to. It's an education. Lots of comments coming in on Robert, but we move on. And this, I think, is heartbreaking.
Normally, like if a child gets hurt and you pick them up, you run to A&E or you run to a GP and they take the child in and you get it fixed. Your baby is fixed. But with Abby, we didn't have anywhere to go. The shutters came down and nothing. They do nothing for us. We were kind of like out in the wide ocean in a little ship, the three of us, with nowhere to go.
That's Martin Colohan, father of Abby, speaking in a clip from a documentary airing at 10 o'clock tonight on TV3 called Cervical Cancer Vaccine, Is It Safe? The lives of at least 130 teenage girls in Ireland have been ruined by a mystery illness which has left them chronically fatigued and largely confined to their homes. They and their families believe that their sickness is linked to a HPV cervical vaccine called Gardasil given to schoolgirls to prevent cervical cancer. REGRET is a support group which represents many of those families, and it's calling for the Health Minister and the HSE to provide long-term treatment plans for these girls, as well as financial assistance. REGRET is also campaigning for an independent investigation into the vaccine and any potential side effects from it. I'm joined in studio by Hannah Cummins and her mother, Evelyn Cummins, along with Anna Cannon, spokesperson from REGRET Support Group, and Dr. Derek Friedman, consultant genito-urinary physician with a practice in Ranelagh in Dublin. Good morning to you all. Now, Derek, first, how common is cervical cancer in Ireland at the moment?
Fortunately, cervical cancer isn't that common because of the cervical smear program, where we detect the cancer, detect pre-cancer changes before it actually becomes cancer. But we have the potential to prevent it altogether.
But how many cases per year might we have?
About 70.
70. The vaccine then, the decision to offer the vaccine, there are many things you could vaccinate against, I presume. Why this particular vaccine in schools?
Well, this is a bit of the holy grail of medicine. In the 20th century, we saw the huge advances in medicine that were brought about by vaccination against infectious diseases. Now we have a vaccine, in fact we have two vaccines that work against cancer, where cancers are caused by a virus. We can protect people from acquiring the virus. Hepatitis B being one and HPV being the other. And cancer of the cervix isn't the only cancer that HPV causes. In the United States, there are about 40,000 deaths per year from cancer of the oropharynx, the tonsils in the back of the throat, which are related to HPV. These are preventable.
And there are other male cancers that are,
of course, as well as cervical cancer, which is the most famous. There's also cancer of the penis, cancer of the anus, particularly in men who have sex with men, and in HIV-positive men. And of course, this oropharyngeal cancer is becoming now the prominent cause of death related to HPV. Preventable.
Now, there has been some discussion in recent times as to whether or not it should be extended to boys in school, but that's perhaps a discussion for another day.
Certainly people who work in the field believe would be the case.
The decision then to offer it to girls in early secondary school, was that something that you welcomed?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm somebody who doesn't jump on vaccines. I like to see them in use for at least 10 years. And I've heard descriptions of trials of this vaccine. I've heard the results going on for at least a decade before it was introduced, and the safety data was hugely encouraging.
So you have no problem with this vaccine?
I have no problem with the vaccine, but I'm obviously very empathetic to what people are describing and for the individual cases, but where we're have a problem is, are they actually linked?
And the statement is often made that every vaccine is not 100% either effective or not 100% safe for everyone who takes it. I mean, do you go along with that notion?
Of course, nothing is that's 100% in life, in medicine, in biology. There's always problems. There's always people who have problems. The essence here for vaccination is we're talking about public health. What brings the greatest benefit to the greatest number of people.
So even if there were casualties along the way, that in terms of giving the herd total immunity, that would be an acceptable risk?
It depends on the number of casualties and whether they're related or not, and a balance is drawn between that, and usually the balance is on the avoidance of risk. This vaccine, I actually spent the weekend, I reviewed about 1,000 papers, I went through everything. The data on this vaccine is extremely strong, particularly the Scandinavian study where they looked at nearly 1 million subjects, and they found no relationship.
All right, well, let's hear Hannah's story. Now, Hannah, before you had your difficulties, what sort of a girl were you? What did you like to do?
I was very sporty. I used to go horse riding every weekend, and I swam every day. And I was a straight A student in school.
When you got the vaccine, did you have any immediate effects?
I did. I was dizzy and I had painful joints and I felt sick afterwards, but they said that was to be expected.
And in fact, it's in the literature provided by the manufacturers of Gardasil. They say it is a common side effect. It's supposed to be a temporary effect.
Yes.
And you were one of those people who suffered as expected.
Yes.
Did you then recover fairly quickly?
I recovered fairly quickly from the initial day, but then a couple of days afterwards, I felt very, very ill. And we went to our own family doctor and they thought it was just a viral infection.
So you didn't at that time associate it with the vaccine at all?
Not at that time.
Now, you're in first year in school, and then there are 2 more doses of the vaccine to be given to you. When did you have those?
I had the second dose in November and then the third dose in May.
How did you feel after each of those doses?
After the second dose, I thought I was okay after it when I got it at school, but then the day after, I was meant to be going to the cinema with my mum, but that morning in the shower, I fell and I collapsed.
Again, did you make the connection with the vaccine?
No, we didn't make the connection at that time.
Now, what about the third dose?
The third time, I got very, very ill, and I wasn't actually in school for the third dose because I had gotten ill after the second dose. And my mum had to bring me up to the hospital to get the third dose of the vaccine. And after that, I just got extremely ill, even more so than I was before.
And still, your parents did not make the connection with the vaccine?
They didn't make the connection because they thought the vaccine was very safe.
How has it impacted on you since? Whether it's related to the vaccine or not, you certainly suffer from very severe symptoms.
I suffer very severely. The symptoms are horrific. I'm in bed nearly 22 hours a day when it's very bad. I have extreme headaches, extreme dizziness, soreness in my bones and in my joints. I get heart palpitations and I get very, very lightheaded. And anytime I stand up, it's very bad because I get very dizzy and it's almost as if I'm going to fall.
This is a condition where not enough blood is delivered to the brain because of rising suddenly. The impact on your education, how much schooling do you get?
I'm homeschooled now because I was missing so much school that I just couldn't keep up with the curriculum in school because I was missing too much at a time.
And this is simply because if you're sitting in a desk in school and you stand up, that you're going to suffer these symptoms.
Yes.
So what do you do? Study kind of lying down at home?
Yes, I study at home. I'm sitting most of the time or I'm lying down. I take periodically, I rest in between. And that's how I study. It's very hard.
How about your sporting activities, your swimming, your horse riding?
It's non-existent. I can't do any sports without fainting.
Are you convinced in your own mind that this is associated with the vaccine?
Yes, because the timeline is very, very efficient.
What have doctors been saying to you, though?
Well, anytime I go to a doctor, they acknowledge that the symptoms are present, but they don't know what's caused it. They don't know why I'm having it. And then if I go to another doctor, they suggest that it's all psychosomatic, which is very hard for a teenage girl to understand when they're saying everything that you're feeling is all in your head.
Did anyone else in your school suffer in the same way?
A lot of people suffered symptoms, but they didn't suffer as majorly as me.
So this was after the initial shots that they actually got the symptoms as predicted in the literature?
Yes.
But no long-term effects. So there's no question of kind of hysteria in the school where you have a lot of girls complaining of the same thing.
No, it's dear.
Now, Evelyn, you had your own struggle with uterine cancer. So when the announcement of the availability of the vaccine was made, how did you feel?
I was absolutely delighted because I didn't want Hannah to have to go through what I went through. And I'm not anti-vaccine at all. I was totally delighted this vaccine had come on the market. And I would have paid for Hannah to get the vaccine, but it came into the school, so I was delighted.
And again, do you have other children?
No, she's my only daughter.
Your only daughter. But you're not anti-vaccine. She would have had all the childhood vaccines.
We wouldn't be in this position if we were anti-vaccine.
Making the connection, as you have done now with the vaccine, how long did that take you to achieve?
About 3 years.
So you weren't jumping on any bandwagon saying, this has got to be the vaccine?
No, not at all. We only connected the dots when I actually saw something online with REGRET. It's a group of parents that have come together that felt isolated. And
REGRET stands for Reactions and Effects of Gardasil Resulting in Extreme Trauma.
Yes.
The acronym then becomes REGRET.
Yes, that's right. And I just read some of their stories, and word for word, they had the same stories that my daughter Hannah had, and the same reactions and the same pain and everything that she was going through.
The notion, as one of the doctors from the Royal College of Physicians in Ireland said, these kind of things happened before Gardasil came on the market. They will happen after Gardasil came on the market. They will happen into the future. People who never take Gardasil will have this kind of condition. What do you say to that contention?
I don't agree with it. Hannah was a straight A student. There's no way that this could have happened to her. I really, really think it's in connection with the vaccine.
Well, let's just hear the doctor in question making that point.
It is exceedingly unlikely that there is any causal connection.
So do you believe it's more likely that these 131 girls presented with symptoms shortly after a vaccine, that's more likely that it just happened?
It is far more likely on the evidence we have that was coincidence, and that does not get away from the fact that these children have a significant condition which requires ongoing care which should be provided for them. But the syndrome is separate to the vaccine.
The syndrome is separate to the vaccine. So the question we have for REGRET, because we are joined by Anna Cannon, spokesperson for REGRET, what do you say to that?
Well, we have the manufacturer's own safety studies into the vaccine. There was a study done in 2010 where we had 1 in 30 of the participants. 11,000 girls were injected with Gardasil, presented with serious adverse events. 1 in 40 presented with a new autoimmune condition. In relation to the Scandinavian study that Dr. Friedman mentioned, we have to be very consistent in our criteria when we're talking about these studies. They were based on hospitalizations. So obviously not all these girls are being hospitalized. So there's a huge number of data missing in that study that needs to be acknowledged. Also, what I'd like to say is that the fact is that all us parents signed that consent form in good faith. We trusted that the HSE had presented us with 5 mild side effects.
In the documentary, it suggests that the kind of people who are members of REGRET are not kind of daft, anti-vaccine people.
Not at all.
There are people who had already vaccinated their children for other conditions.
Yeah, I have 4 children who are all fully vaccinated. We welcomed this vaccine. We trusted that the 5 mild on-the-day side effects presented to us by the HSE were the full picture, were correct. What we weren't given was the patient information leaflet by the manufacturer.
Now, we have here a comparison. This is what school children and their parents are given. There may be some mild side effects, including pain, redness or swelling in the arm where the vaccine was given, headache, dizziness, nausea, and or a mild fever. These can be treated with paracetamol or ibuprofen. Rarer side effects include an itchy rash or hives. Like most vaccines, severe allergic reactions are extremely rare. As usual, seek medical advice if you are concerned. So that's what parents are given. The detail, and there's a lot of detail always given with these medicines from the manufacturers. As with other vaccines, they say, side effects that have been reported during general use include swollen glands, neck, armpit or groin, muscle weakness, abnormal sensations, tingling in the arms, legs and upper body, or confusion. This is Guillain-Barré syndrome. Acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, dizziness, vomiting, joint pain, aching muscles, unusual tiredness or weakness, chills, generally feeling unwell, bleeding or bruising more easily than normal, and skin infection at the injection site.
That's right. And on the American documentation, which is strangely enough, that includes seizures as well. And we are advised that we should contact our health professionals should we experience any of these side effects or additional side effects. The problem is that we now have a situation, and also to mention that it doesn't mention in the leaflet either that this vaccine is not proven to last any longer than 8 years. It only covers 2 strands of HPV virus, which means that all our girls will require ongoing screening either way. But
Dr. Friedman is shaking his head. 2 strands of HPV?
No, the Gardasil covers 8, covers 4 types of HPV virus.
And how many strands are there?
These are the most significant ones, and there's also quite a bit of evidence that you get cross protection against other strains as well. I mean, the real data that has shown is that in the vaccinated cohort, that the prevalence of precancer changes has just dropped dramatically.
You're saying that it does work, but it doesn't help. The fact that it works as a vaccine does not necessarily help or reassure the people represented by REGRET. Now, how similar are the symptoms of the other people that are members of REGRET to those that Hannah has encountered?
Yeah, well, we have a situation in Ireland where we have 150 girls now presenting with a long line of serious, debilitating, chronic illnesses post-Gardasil, all girls that were perfectly healthy, sporty, high-achieving girls prior to the vaccine. But not only that, these girls' symptoms also correspond directly with 1,100 girls in Denmark who are treated in 5 regional centres for what they think are vaccine-related injuries. They've now withdrawn the specific vaccine off the market.
These are the health department has decided not to use it. I mean, Gardasil would still be available, presumably, to private doctors.
Gardasil has been withdrawn from the market and replaced with an alternative vaccine, which is Cervavix. Japan has stopped recommending the vaccine, and we have petitions now running in countries such as Spain and France that are signed by highly ranked health professionals, hundreds of signatures from physicians. But what I want to say there is that we have 150 girls now in the REGRET group alone whose symptoms correspond directly with the manufacturer's own patient information, which we don't get disclosed to us as we sign the consent form for our 12-year-old girls. And that's a basic human right. But also, I want to ask the Minister for Health and the HSE right now, what are you going to do to help these girls? These girls' lives have been turned upside down. Like Hannah's, they can't go to school and finish their second-level education. They can't go to their debs. They can't have a boyfriend. They can't socialise with their friends. And families are devastated. And this needs to be sorted now because we have acknowledged that there are side effects of this medication.
Dr. Friedman, what do you want to say in response? I mean, 150 girls, it's a huge number, really.
It's a huge number, and I'm just wondering why, having reviewed all the literature, that this is not reported.
They are
not reported in any other country in peer-reviewed medical journals. I mean, this. I'm sorry. I spent the weekend looking at this. Yeah. They are not in PubMed. They are not in published medical journals, which are subject to peer review.
But they have been reported to the likes of the HPRA.
Okay.
They have been reported as
There's a couple of points you brought up. One is the Danish change of vaccine from Gardasil to the bivalent one, Cervarix, which I am informed is done on economic grounds. Now, in England, they've changed from the bivalent Cervarix to the quadrivalent Gardasil because it was more effective and because it also protected against the acquisition of genital warts. But I think the real nub of this question and the real difficulty is that we're trying to balance between something that is very evidently temporally related. You get the vaccine and you get these ill effects. and the benefits of the vaccine, which come in maybe 20 or 30 years down the field. And we're dealing with another situation. We're dealing with symptoms that are very, very similar to the ME chronic fatigue syndrome, where there is a prevalence of 250 per 100,000 anyway. Now, the real answer here is you're saying, and you have a cohort of 150 people who have suffered and growing
daily.
Okay, you have this cohort. These need to be actually investigated intensely, both epidemiologically, immunologically, and neurologically, and be properly and fully assessed. You pointed out and mentioned a Danish study only dealt with hospitalized patients.
No, the Stockholm study that you referred to was not the Danish study. Was
Sorry,
the
no, this
Stockholm study that you mentioned.
In fact, it covered 1 million subjects.
Yeah, but hospitalization,
yes,
it wasn't
because
covering the full spectrum of
serious illnesses and something serious, significantly serious enough to stop a vaccination program certainly warrants hospitalization for investigation.
Derek, just to get back to the situation that Hannah finds herself in, the timeline, she says, is fairly persuasive.
It's a very convincing thing. You get something and something happens. Yeah, of course it is, yes.
And the fact that after each episode, that the symptoms...
but this can happen sporadically as well.
I'm just wondering, in terms, you mentioned the similarity symptomatically with ME, myalgic encephalomyelitis. I mean, does anyone know what causes that?
No. This is, this is the kind of fog that we're dealing with. We are dealing with something that is unknown, and there's a complete fog. We don't know what causes ME. We can't get a grasp on it. So consequently, it's so hard to prove or disprove anything.
Hannah, you have no doubt that this was caused by the vaccine. You've no doubt.
No doubt at all.
The fact that it would, as Derek has pointed out, protect the whole population by and large later on, while you still might endure these effects.
Well, is he saying that 150 girls plus have to suffer to get these effects later on? Because I don't think that's fair. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to the other 150 girls.
Yeah, that is if the link were ever to be definitively established.
Yes.
Just in relation to the figures there, we know that 0.15% in relation to cervical cancer. And if you look at the manufacturer's own trial, it's actually 0.8% presented with serious adverse events. So I'd question whether the benefit really outweighs the risks, because this is a line that's coming over and over again.
Evelyn, you're probably feeling terribly guilty about allowing Hannah to have the vaccine. But, I mean, you were doing it with the best will in the world to protect her long term. And the question, as Derek says, in the literature, no definitive link has been made.
That's not right. I mean, the timeline...
Because if there is no link, you don't have to feel guilty. That's the point.
No, I am fully aware of that, what you're saying. But the timeline with all the girls corresponds. So there has to be a link. If you would like to try and live with my daughter and see her going through what she goes through every day, it's terrible.
Derek, the medical establishment might be reluctant to accept that there could be a link. We've had lots of vaccine...
I think we would be very... If we could establish a link and knew there was a link, we'd be very happy to accept it, and we'd be the first to say, pull this. But, I mean, the link has not been established. I mean, there's been a huge number of trials. And remember that this vaccine prevents cancer. Cancer kills.
Yeah, but only for 8 years. We know the vaccine doesn't last. It hasn't been proven to last any longer than 8 years.
The evidence is coming through is showing a much longer duration of effect.
We haven't seen that evidence.
Certainly the Australian studies are showing this. So, I think that's a bit of a red herring.
Minister Varadkar, in trying to I suppose, stop this story about the vaccine, is saying that, when you do have these vaccine panics around the place, that it does cost lives, referring to, for example, the MMR vaccine, that if you don't get herd immunity among children, you have catastrophic consequences. So he was trying to, I suppose, put the lid on it.
Yeah, well, the difference there between the MMR and what we're doing here in relation to Gardasil is that we have side effects listed on the manufacturer's own documentation that is featured in these girls and thousands of girls abroad, whilst the MMR and the link to autism, for example, that was not listed in the manufacturer's own documentation.
Well, I mean, again, with the MMR, you saw reasonably immediate effects within the next decade. Children died in Wales, for instance, because they weren't vaccinated. With the HPV story, it's going to be 2 to 3 to 4 decades before you really see the benefits of it.
And meanwhile, we have 150 girls who are not getting as much of a look over adults' shoulders to ensure that their quality of life is improved.
The documentary Cervical Cancer Vaccine, Is It Safe? Airs tonight at 10 o'clock on TV3, and people can watch that and make up their own minds. But my thanks to Hannah and her mother, Evelyn Cummins, to Anna Cannon, spokesperson from REGRET Sport Group, and Dr. Derek Friedman, consultant genito-urinary physician with a practice in Ranelagh in Dublin. Thank you all for joining us on the programme.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Mary.
Have you heard about shingles?
No, tell me.
You know the way most of us had chickenpox when we were children? I've just learned that if you've had chickenpox, you are at risk of developing shingles. Shingles can result in severe pain, and people like us are more at risk.
You could talk to your healthcare professional about shingles prevention, treatment or long-term care.
I will. Marty, take a look at shingles.ie for more information.
Brought to you by Sanofi Pasteur MSD and supported by Age Action, Irish Patients Association and Chronic Pain Ireland.
The Pat Kenny Show.
With Energia, energising homes and businesses all across Ireland.
News Talk 106 to 108.
Some of the comments coming in on foot of the interview with Hannah and her mother and the others on the panel. My daughter had this condition, and since she suffered with unexplained pains in arms, legs, hips, chest, etc., she has a lot of memory loss. She also suffers with rashes on her body and generally feels unwell. She was a perfectly healthy young lady before she had this injection, and if we could, we would turn back time. To see her suffering every day breaks our hearts. Hannah, so well spoken, obviously a bright girl, and our heart goes out to her. My daughter is suffering from the HPV vaccine like the girl you have on. It is heartbreaking. That's the word we hear again and again. So frightening what the girls are going through. My daughter has been virtually housebound since receiving the HPV vaccine. As she said, she's existing, sleeping and eating, all you need to survive, and that's all she's doing. It's no life for a 19-year-old. My daughter also suffers from all the symptoms mentioned, says another. Well, if this is a condition, then what is the condition called, and why are the girls not being treated for it in the proper way? Why are they being left out in the cold to continue to suffer without any help? That's from a mother of one of the girls who's suffering. Hearing about Hannah is heartbreaking. The girls can't be ignored or dismissed anymore. My sister is affected too, and it's horrible watching her suffer. She's only 18. Her life has been on hold for the last 3 years. I don't know how she gets through every day in chronic pain. She can barely walk at times with joint pain. Her headaches are excruciating. She has numerous other symptoms. She's been to every consultant and specialist possible. All give no answers. She had a totally unremarkable medical history before the Gardasil injection. She was so active and healthy and super fit. She trained 2 to 3 times a week. She was a very high achiever in school. But now, the simplest of tasks and activities are too much for her. This is not a coincidence. Maybe the anti-vaccine people aren't so daft after all, Pat. Maybe we are ahead of the rest of you. Are you allowed to refuse the vaccine? Of course you are. You just sign if you want it, and if not, you don't get it. Could it not be left until they are older? I think it's a bit too young. They are not developed because it's given around first year in secondary school, and I presume that's the precautionary principle to get to them long before they are expected to have any sexual contact. Now, confidence is not something that can be learned, like a set